When the focus expands, it swallows everything that surrounds it, even if it does not have it. But this does not make the oppressor exempt from the pain of the torment of conscience and the blood of guilt. Despite all the circumstances, the oppressor remained unjust in the face of justice, even if he became a hero. What if our story's hero is the villain isn't the one that hurt people and do things for their personal benefit. The villain, it's the one that has the power to do the right and never do it. The one that doesn't know what pain is. Her words is something she never wanted to have in her mouth. But the hard truth is that this is what she's become her life, and the life of the most people in this world is one of the hardest lives, and she isn't one of them. And that's her real crime. The reality of her words, the deep sentences, the tense feeling makes it hard for her. She knows that her grandmother is right. She knows that she needs listening to her, but she can't accept the reality that she's a villain like the others. She's one of the most powerful mafia in the world, one of the most powerful characters in this story. But life isn't always on your side. Sometimes people take wrong turns. Sometimes their choices aren't the ones that make them happy. One of those people is Carolina. After a failed relationship, she ends up losing her job and her relationship in the same day. In a few days, she was left with nothing. No house, no money, and nobody to help her out. So she needs to find a solution fast, to pay out the bills and find a place to sleep, because the Desperate, she starts looking for jobs, but no company wants to hire her without any experience or degree. She can't find a job and she's about to be homeless. Until one day she found a job ad. The ad said the job needed no experience or degree. All she needed was to be young, pretty and smart, just for a modeling job that will pay her thousands. After 1 week of modeling, it sounds too good to be true, and it's just too perfect of a situation. But what other choice does she have? Now her boss starts to be interested in her, and he starts making her feel awkward, but at the same time making her feel important and pretty, that her self-confidence goes up because of the fact that she's working for him, and he's always telling her that she's pretty and amazing. She likes the attention she's receiving. She likes the fact that she has now the money to pay the bills, to get a pretty home, all because of him. So she decides to ignore the fact that her boss likes her. Until the moment comes when they have to be at a party, in front of the whole company and the clients. He decides that he wants to show Carolina as his date. And that night, after a few drinks, he starts more than drunk, and he knows that she was too scared to stop him from doing what he wants. The next day she decides to quit her job. What happened the night before with her boss is something that is haunting her. It's something that she can't forget, and a fact that she's too scared to go back there. Same time, this job is her only resource of money and her only source of income that she needs right now to pay the bills. So she decided to keep going to work, but try to be more careful and try to do her job as fast as she can in order to avoid any interaction with her boss. But her boss has other plans to make sure that Carolina never forgets what happened between them that night. Every time she sees him, he starts telling her how good she looked that night. Every time he was close to her, and it's getting more than stressful. She's afraid what he might do if they were ever alone together. So she decides to avoid him and do her job as quickly and as isolated as she can. She just can't deal with that anymore. She feels disgusted every time she thinks about him or that night, and every time she thinks about that night, she feels the need to shower and get all the feelings she's had out. The only problem is now there's no job, and that means no money, and no money means no paying the bills, and no paying the bills means that she will be homeless. But she can just take that anymore. She needs to find another source of income and fast, and with her beauty and her looks, there's only one thing to do, and she knows it. So without even questioning, she goes to the modeling agency where she saw the jobs ad and decides to give a try. She has nothing to lose anyway, and the people at the modeling agency were more than pleased to hire a new model that's as beautiful as her. They start giving her some jobs. At first, it was mostly jobs for a few ads on the newspaper or on the internet. But after a few days, she started to get more difficult jobs. At first, she did a few photo shoots and then a catalog for a famous brand. She couldn't believe that her life changed so fast. She was doing what she loved and she was going better than ever. It was so fast, like the life was just trying to make up for all the bad things happened to her, that she didn't expect her modeling career to get as much fame as it did. And now she's the cover model for the most famous brands and companies out there. Her life was going fast. She's in the spotlight, she's in everyone's lips, she's doing job after job. She starts to know some of the biggest artists and stars. She lives the life she always dreamed of having. Everything was just perfect. She was getting everything she dreamed of, and she was the happiest she could ever be. She even starts to get a huge celebrity fan base, and she's not even 20 yet. People start to gossip about her life. Everyone wants to know everything about her. Her personal life wasn't the same anymore. The paparazzi starts to follow her everywhere she goes. Her life was now a complete chaos. Her friends start treating her differently. And that's why she started to spend her time mostly with the people she works with. At least they treat her nicely. And at least she can actually feel like herself, not some kind of a celebrity that's always been followed and criticized. Her life was amazing. She couldn't ask for more. She was doing good at work. She did great at all her shoots, and everyone is always telling her how brilliant she is, and no one is bothering her like all the other people at. She starts to feel powerful. She's not that sweet, insecure girl anymore. She's the new face of the industry. She's strong, she's powerful, she's gorgeous, and she knows it, and she won't let anyone tell her otherwise. Even other models start getting jealous of her success, and the hate they have for her isn't hidden at all. Every time she was on a runway or in a shoot, she's got nothing but evil looks that try to intimidate her. Being in the world of modeling means that you work really close with some of the biggest fashion companies in the world. She works with one of the most famous fashion lines in the industry. And they do a collaboration with another huge fashion company that sends a businessman in order to help them with the project. She meets him in a few meetings and talks, and she actually really likes him. She always wanted to meet someone like him. He's good-looking, he's smart, he's rich, and they share the same interest in fashion. They have the same kind of humor, and he makes her laugh, and she never felt anything like that with anyone before. The collaboration project needs more communication between the designers and the businessmen, so they have lots of meeting, which gives them more chances to spend time together. They get to know each other better. He takes her out for lunch and to the nicest places. They go to a few movies, and with every minute they spend together, she likes him even more. And it's more than obvious that he likes her as well. By the way he looks at her and the way he talks about her in front of others, he looks at her like she's made of gold, like he's found something precious. But of course they try to hide the fact that they have feeling towards each other. They're at work, they're working together in a huge project. They shouldn't be distracted by each other. It would make things more complicated, it would make the project more stressful, it would create drama. They can't and don't want to cause drama, so they decide to hide their feelings for each other and the chemistry between them. But hiding it was harder than they thought, because every time they were close to each other, she could feel the heat of his body and the intensity of his look, and he could feel her perfume and her breath every time they were close. When they were sitting next to each other, he could see how smooth and how soft her skin looks, how perfect her face was. He couldn't stop looking at her lips. Every time his eyes were on her and her eyes were on him, it was hard for them to focus on the work that they're supposed to do. They try to have normal conversations that doesn't include the fact that they have feelings for each other, but it was so hard because they're both nervous every time they're together, because they're trying not to do anything stupid, because the feelings they have towards each other is more than just work. They both know that they are too drawn to each other, and it's getting more than obvious, and they can't hide it anymore. One of them has to make a move, or this is going to drive them crazy. He decided to be brave and to take the first step. He can't hide it anymore, and she can't hide it either. They're both feeling this intense feelings, and they're so overwhelmed. So he makes sure that he's alone with her. He asked her to meet him in his office. At the end of the day, he tries to act normal in front of others, not to raise any suspicions. And now they're all alone in his office. The air is tense. They're sitting across from each other, looking at each other's eyes. She can tell that he's nervous because of how tense he is. She's nervous too. She's waiting for him to speak, but he's struggling with the words. He's trying to control his breath and to sound normal. He finally looks straight into her eyes and looks at her in a way that makes her shiver. He takes a deep breath and says, "I need to tell you something." She answers, "You better say it before I panic." They both laugh a little bit. The laughs was out of nervousness more than from any real amusement. He takes another deep breath and looks at her directly in the eyes and says, "You look amazing tonight. You always look amazing, but tonight you look even more than just amazing." She's caught off guard by the fact that he mentioned her looks, and it make her cheeks red. She says, "Thanks. So do you?" He smiles because she was caught off guard, but she also returned the compliment. He tries to keep it calm. He look at her for a few more seconds, then he say, "There's something else I need to tell you." And she looks at him confused. She says, "What is it?" He takes a deep breath again and says, "I like you." The words leaves his mouth and she's caught off guard again. She's speechless. She can feel her heart beating faster. She knows that she have feelings towards him, but she didn't expect him to make the first move and say it out loud. She couldn't say anything. She was too lost in her thoughts. He looked at her with worried eyes. He asks, "Are you okay?" She say, "Yeah, I'm just a bit surprised that you said it out loud." He look even more worried. He's afraid that now he screw up everything. He says, "So I guess you don't feel the same about me?" She says, No, I do. I just never thought you'll be the one to say it." He feels relieved. He says, "Really?" They sit there for a few more seconds in silence. He look at her and ask, "So does that mean that you like me too?" She say, "Yes, I do. I really do." He smile widely. She hasn't seen him smile like that before. He's really happy and she's blushing. He told her to meet him at a certain address, and she was too excited and too curious, so she asked him what they were going to do on their first date, and all he say was, "It's a surprise." She couldn't stop thinking about what would happen in the date and how it would be to spend time with him in a place different than work. She was so excited. She was so nervous. When the day came and she finally went to the address he gave her, she was shocked to see that the place was a small park. It was a place that was isolated. It was a place only he knows about, and they would be completely alone. The surprise was really a surprise, and he was already waiting for her. He stood up to meet her. His eyes meet her. He look at her and say, "You look gorgeous." She feels her cheeks get red from his words and from the way he's looking at her. They walk a little bit in the park and they talked for hours and laugh a lot. He took her to a small field of roses that he planted there before her. She was shocked by the place, by his creativity, and by the way he was so prepared for this date. He took her hand and he walked with her into the field of roses. He picked a rose for her. He put it in her hair, and he took every opportunity to be close to her to make them touch. He took her hand, he put his hand on her back, and every touch made her heart beat with excitement and nervousness. At the end of the night they are in the middle of the field, and the sky was pink, the sun was setting. It was a wonderful view, and he pulls her closer to him, and they were standing really close to each other. Their bodies were close. He pulled her even closer to him until she was completely in his arms. He puts his right hand on her cheek, and their faces are so close to each other that they can feel each other's breaths. He looks into her eyes, and all she can think is how good he smells, how beautiful his eyes are, and how sexy he looks with that shirt and the way he's holding her. She look at him. She can feel her eyes drowning in his. He's so beautiful. And the way he's looking at her and the way he's holding her like she's the most precious thing in the world is more than just intense. He leans closer to her, and now their foreheads are almost touching. And he says, "You're the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." And she wants to say something in return, but she can't. She can't focus because he's so close and she's so nervous. He's also looking into her eyes. He's losing his cool. He wants to keep looking into her eyes, but all he can think about is her lips. Some of them congratulated them. The others were just jealous at the fact that someone like her was happy and she was dating that hot, successful business. People at the modeling agency also found out about them. The other models at first were just surprised, but then some of them get jealous. And then the paparazzi found out, and they are now everywhere. They keep following her. They keep trying to know more about her relationship and about the guy she's dating. Some of the paparazzi are nice. They don't care that she wants to have some privacy about her relationship to them. They just want the new, and they will do anything to get it. One of the paparazzi tried to take picture inside of his office. Another paparazzi tried to follow them on a date. Even her home is surrounded by paparazzi. The paparazzi and the media are driving her crazy. Their attention towards her just became bigger. More cameras, more questions. And more stress, more people following her, more photographers, more everything, and she's not sure if her relationship would survive any of this. She likes him, she really does, and she wants to be with him. He makes her happier than she ever been, but this situation is getting really out of hand. It's too intense and she's too stressed. It's also affecting her work. She's struggling to keep up the normal modeling schedule and to keep up the dates and the meetings with him, and she doesn't know what to do. Everything was too much. The paparazzi, her work, the stress, and the fact that their relationship is going too fast and too serious was making things worse. And she's starting to struggle so much to keep up with everything. He knows that she's having trouble with paparazzi and media because of their relationship, so he wants to do something to help her. So he came up with an idea that he think could help them and stop the paparazzi. So he called her to meet him at his office. She went to meet him, and as soon as she arrived, he says, "Sit down, we need to talk." She did as she was told, and she sat across from him, and her heart immediately started beating faster. She was a bit nervous when he told her to sit and that he wanted to talk. She thought that maybe he wanted to end their relationship because of the stress it's causing her. so she was waiting for him to speak. But he could see that she's nervous, so he took a deep breath and said, "I have an idea that could help us." She immediately relaxed and said, "What is it?" That's when he told her about his idea, about his plan to stop the paparazzi that are following her and making her nervous all the time. He said, "I was thinking that maybe we could pretend that we broke up or something like that." She was surprised by his idea. She couldn't deny that his idea was clever and it could actually work. It could make the paparazzi back off, she said. "For how long you think we should do it?" He think for a moment and says, "I think maybe in 2 months, that's a good amount of time." She nodded in agreement. He said, "But are you okay with this plan?" She nodded again and say, "Yes, it could actually help, and 2 months is not that long. They would forget about me in 2 months." He looked at her and smiled and say, "Great, I'm so happy you're agreeing with my plan." They both agree to stay apart for 2 months, hoping that the paparazzi will get off her tail in the meantime. But staying apart was hard. They still see each other on work, but they can't keep being close to each other like normal people. They're trying to pretend in front of everyone that they're not together. Their coworkers know about their plans so they can be at their normal self in front of the employees. But in public, they're trying hard to act as if they're not together at all. They're avoiding contact and any kind of attention to not feed the paparazzi. At first, they had to admit to themselves that the plan was working. They get much less attention from the media and the paparazzi, and there's almost no questions or cameras trying to follow her every move. After what felt like 10 years, it's finally the 2 months mark, and the paparazzi finally backed off. They're not bothering her anymore, at least not in a way that makes her life a living hell, so they can finally stop pretending. She felt that it's the right time to see him again, to be with him. She wanted him so badly, she missed him so much. She can't wait to be in his arms again. And he feels the same way. He couldn't stay away from her for so long. He needed her, wanted her. He wants to hold her and be close to her all day, every day. He was so happy that the 2 months was finally up and he could hold her again. So when the plan was finally over and they were able to be together again, he called her. He says, "I want to see you tonight." And she couldn't hide how happy she was and say, "Yes, I will see you tonight." They met at his apartment like they always do. This time, it was different. When she arrived to the apartment, he took her in his arms and hugged her tightly. He didn't want to let go. He said, "I missed you so much." And she felt overwhelmed and happy. She said, "I missed you too." They stay like that in each other's arms for a while, until he let her go, just enough so he'd look at her face. He was so happy to have her back, and she was so happy to be back in his arms. She looked at him and asked, "Can I tell you something?" He smiled and said, "Of course, you can say anything you want." She took a deep breath because she was a bit nervous and she's not sure what to say. He looks at her with curious eyes. She look at him and say, "I have to tell you something important, okay?" He's surprised that she's being so serious. He says, "Okay, what is it?" "What you need to say." And then she takes another breath and say, "I'm pregnant." He was shocked in the first half of a second. His eyes went bigger and he looked so surprised he didn't say anything. He didn't know what to say. And she looked at him and say, "Please say something. Anything." He took a minute to take in what she just said to him. He finally say, "You're pregnant. You pregnant with my baby." And she was happy and she smiles a little bit and say, "Yes, I am pregnant with your baby. I wanted you to be the first to know." He looked at her with so many things in his mind. He feels so many feelings at the same time. He's happy, he's scared, he's worried, he's excited. All of these feelings are overwhelming him. She noticed that he's having a hard time finding the right words, so she say, "Are you mad at me?" He immediately say, "No, no, of course I'm not mad. Why would I be mad at you?" She sighed in relief. She was afraid that maybe he would be angry at her. He pulled her close to him and he hugged her tightly and he held her face in his hands and say, "Why on earth would I be mad at you for being pregnant? It's my baby. I'm so happy right now, you have no idea." She smiled at him and said, "You promise you're not mad?" He said, "Yes, I promise. I'm not just not mad, I'm freaking out, but in a good way. I'm so happy." She put her head on his chest and he was still holding her close. He say, "I will take care of you and our baby, I promise." She can feel his heart beating through his chest and she felt so safe and happy. She looked at him and say, "What are we going to do?" He was thinking the same thing and he say, "Well, I'm not going to let the paparazzi find out, that's for sure." And she laugh a little bit and say, "Good idea." Because they don't want their baby be put in the media and followed by paparazzi. It would be a nightmare. He takes a deep breath and say, "Maybe you should stop modeling until the baby is born." She looks surprised by the fact that maybe she would have to quit modeling and she say, "What? Why?" He say, "I don't want you to be stressed. I know what it does to you. I also don't think it's good for the baby to have you stressed all the time." And she sigh because he's right. It's so stressful. It can't be good for the baby. He say, "What do you think? Is it a good idea?" "It's just a few months, just until the baby is born." And she nods because even though it's a hard decision, it's also the right decision for her and for the baby. They wanted the wedding to be small and intimate because they want to avoid the attention and they want it to be special just for them and their close friends and family. So they made it into a small ceremony. They invited their closest people to be there with them. On their special day, there was no public, No paparazzi, just them and the people they love the most. He was standing there looking at her as she was walking down the aisle, and his heart was beating faster and his eyes were glued to her. She looked so beautiful and radiant. She looked at him and she was mesmerized by his beauty, and when she finally reached him at the end of the aisle, it was just them looking at each other. Nothing else mattered at that moment. They said their vows, they exchanged the rings, and when finally they say, "You may kiss the bride," he gently lifts her face with his hand and kisses her with all the love in the world. The ceremony was beautiful and it was absolutely perfect. And then they spent the rest of the day together celebrating their marriage and their love, surrounded by the people closest to them, and it was absolutely amazing. After the ceremony and the party, they go to their home, and when they got to their bedroom, they both look at each other with pure love and desire, and he kisses her again and he say, "I hope you're ready for your honeymoon, Mrs." And she melts from hearing him calling her that. Finally, after a few long months, she gives birth to their baby, and they are incredibly happy to hold their child for the first time. It was a small and healthy, beautiful baby boy, and they were so grateful for this wonderful little person they made together. Holding their baby in their arms for the first time was such a beautiful and overwhelming experience. Nothing in the world was more important to them at that moment than this tiny little person.